Civics and Politics, University of Mumbai. I would like to welcome you all for the book discussion on communal violence, post-migration and the state, Gujarat since 2002 by Dr. Sanjeevini Badigar Lokhande. Now, Dr. Surendra Zundre, the HOD of Department of Civics and Politics, would be formally welcoming all the guests in the room.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm really happy to welcome our distinguished guest, Professor Spodek from Ketkar University, United States, Kumar, distinguished editor, Professor Zahir, Director, Center for Promotion of Democracy and Secularism, and also the visiting faculty at the Department of Civics and Politics, University of Mumbai. It is really a heartfelt moment for me to arrange this function. My colleague, Dr. Sanjeevini Badigar Lokhande, who is will be discussed in this program. We are all of us at the Department of Civics and Politics are proud of her very significant contribution in the academic discipline of not only political science but various disciplines of the social sciences, and particularly the problem on which we have done her PhD work. So I congratulate on behalf of the faculty, on behalf of the students, and also on behalf of the university for this very important contribution to the academics. Also highlighting the significant issues, the social issues which we have been facing, which we are facing since a few days, or you can say few months. I'm very happy to welcome all these students here. Yes, on behalf of the Department of Civics and Politics, and I again request Ketkar to work.
Now we would like to call upon Mr. Ramchandra Kharat from the Cambridge University Press to give on the mementos.
Professor Spodek.
Professor Surendra Zundre, Professor Spodek, Kumar, Ketkar, Professor Zahir, distinguished members of the audience, faculty members, dear friends and students, a very, very warm welcome to you. I realize warm is not a very good word in this weather, but it's really heartwarming to see all of you come together and come out for a book on communal violence, forced migration in the state, particularly in the times that we live in. But so I really want to thank you. This book, I've been asked to share what this book is about. This book is essentially a work of forced migration, or also what is known as displacement. And forced migration is when migration is forced. That is when people are forced to leave their homes, or sometimes forced to flee, and this has become a domain of study, particularly in the 1990s. And however, the way in which this issue received analytical visibility through this category of internally displaced persons brought this issue on the spotlight. However, what I also realized while doing research on it was that thought was developed in it in seemingly insular domains. So you have the domain of citizenship, but then you have also studies on peace and conflict study, and then there is the issue of displacement due to natural disasters, which is developed as disaster management studies. So all these seemingly disparate domains come together in this category of internally displaced persons, which I found displacement as a lens while doing my research to be a particularly insightful lens in that it brings out a number of issues, particularly the sedentary and entrenched bias of social sciences. So I found it to be a particularly useful lens. However, this is not something that immediately occurred to me, of course, because as seems to be the design of PhD programs, I think around the world, you are expected to immerse yourself in data, and nobody is really helping you emerge from it. So initially I encountered a number of methodological challenges because it is an emerging domain of study. First of all, the fact that aggregate data is not available, and as a director in Ahmedabad told me, just because you show that people move from here to there, you don't, there is a forced migration. So these kind of issues did come up while studying, not to mention that while there are a number of normative developments on this issue of forced migration in the category of refugee and internally displaced persons, it's all couched in the language of human rights, which is a sort of an apolitical humanitarian language. While on the other hand, the reports I encountered, and there were significant reports on the violence in 2002 in Gujarat, independent reportage, media reportage, a lot of investigation, a number of state authorities as well, state functionaries that came up with evidence, investigative reportage also that counted as evidence. However, at the end of all of this, while this whole violence of 2002 generated a lot of attention, national and international attention, and all this reportage, after a few years, it came to be described as a riot that lasted for all of 3 days. And so what is central to this book is the question of whether forced migration is an aberration in a democracy or whether it has larger implications. And that's really at the heart of the book, this question of whether forced migration is an aberration. It's a one-time thing and people get back to life as normal as it was popularly been made out to be in the case of Gujarat 2002, or does it have larger implications? And the book looks at Gujarat therefore through the lens of displacement, and as I said, I found this lens to be particularly insightful because it looks at things from a very new perspective, and I thought it was looking at things from an out-of-the-box perspective in a sense, because it doesn't take the otherwise sedentary and entrenched bias of social sciences and does not limit itself to that. So the book begins from a grounded perspective of what happened in 2002, but the structure of the book is such that it follows the different, what are known to be stages of displacement. So there's flight, when one is forced to flee. There is the transition, the in-between camp phase, and after displacement. Something in terms of the structure is also that it starts from a very grounded perspective of following processes of displacement, and then goes on to zooms out, so to speak, to how this issue plays out in the larger political universe of the state and also at the national level. So the book starts, as I said, from a grounded perspective, and following processes, while looking for processes, I found that processes were also indicative of causality. So in following how people were displaced, the events, one also found out what leads to displacement. So the initial chapters talk about it, after which, and also talk about the context of Gujarat. There's been a lot of work on Gujarat, which instantly focuses a lot on Ahmedabad. And somebody told me Ahmedabad is not all of Gujarat, and so I tried to cover 4 districts and look at 4 districts in my work. The book then goes on to look at the official account of the violence. So the state, then I try to do a policy. The book tries to do a policy analysis, and therein lies one of the central arguments of the book also, that communal violence in Gujarat, communal violence is referred to as a hullad or tufan, which means a storm. And you can find that this understanding of communal violence as a natural, inevitable storm having currency even in state practices and even in academic writings. And that I think is an important argument of the book, that communal violence in the way this, in the governance of it, ends up being portrayed as something that is inevitable, that can at best be ameliorated through relief. And so there's no talk of rights. But while this is happening at the state level, in 2002, what was interesting is that the displaced Muslims claiming the category of internally displaced persons, because by that time that category had been disseminated through this organization called Antarik Vistapit Hakka Rakshak Samiti. So the book also centrally focuses on this phenomena of relief colonies, 81 of which exist around 11 districts of Gujarat. And finally, the last, and looks at a lot of the civil society work that went on. I'm very happy to say that among our audience also someone who has worked, committed several years of her life towards victims of violence. Several other people who've been working for years on this issue. And then at the end, the last chapter of the book looks at this issue, how violence is followed by good governance. And the book looks at how this issue plays out, then stops playing out in the larger political universe, but is mainly the subject in the theatre of courtrooms. And in conclusion, I think I just want to close with saying that the book is essentially about the problematic of the rights of displaced persons in the context of Gujarat 2002, and I think today it's very pertinent to quote Baba Sahib Ambedkar, who said that the greatness of a culture is not in its claims to antiquity, but in how it treats its weakest sections. And I've paraphrased it a bit, so please forgive me. But that's the essence of what he said. And the importance, I think, of this book is that the lens of displacement, or actually the importance of the lens of displacement, I shouldn't be overtly promoting the book. So the importance of the lens of displacement is that it not only highlights this question of vulnerability of displaced populations, but it throws into sharp relief and sharp focus also this whole entity of nation state and the character of state. And I think what we see from since Gujarat 2002 is also shifts in the character of the state. Thank you so much for your attention. And everybody else, I'm also very eager to hear that. Panelists.
Now I would like to introduce our first panel member, and that is Dr. Spodek. Now, Dr. Spodek is an eminent world historian, a professor of history and geography and urban studies at the Temple University in Philadelphia, United States. He has received his education from the Columbia University and his PhD from the University of Chicago. Dr. Spodek's most famous work is his book on world's history, which has now reached its 5th edition, and it's considered to be a very, very widely read textbook. But more than anything else, Dr. Spodek has had a really, really close connection with India. He first visited our country as a Fulbright scholar, and since then has spent about 12 years living and teaching in India. He has particularly been interested in the city of Ahmedabad and has also written extensively on urbanization in India, including urban-rural integration and regional development, urban form and meaning in Southeast Asia, and Ahmedabad, shock city of 20th century, and a wide array of articles and analysis of working women in India. Professor Spodek, it's an honor to have you here, and it would be really great for you to join.
Thank you very much. Sanjeevini will find now that her book is released, that once a book is released, it's out there in the public and people will read it as they choose and make their own decisions as to what's there. My opening comment is I think the book is richer than you tell us so far. Sanjeevini tells us about displacement as a central issue in the book, and it is a central issue, but there are a lot more central issues in this book that I found very intriguing, that's really why I'm especially glad that you invited me to visit here. The first issue, first of all, as I read the book, I began by saying another book on 2002 in Ahmedabad and Gujarat, another book on violence. What's going to be new here? And it's the new parts that I really want to talk about, because 2002 is so well known, so many people have written about it, including me, so many people have written about it, that the question is, what's here that I think hasn't been there before? And part of it, I think, is the whole choice of using definitions, definition of displacement, and the biggest one for me was what are the rights of displaced people, and what are the compassion that is shown for displaced people. This question of what are rights of people has become universally interesting and universally discussed. One of my fields is urbanization, and you find this question a lot, perhaps some of you have run into it, a lot in Latin America, where people talk about the right of the city and the right to the city. Exactly what rights do people have? I'll come back. But the issue of definitions, I thought, was a really critical part of this book, because Sanjeevini is asking us to look at issues, displacement, one of them, not the only one, is asking us to look at lots of issues that we may not have looked at before. In my discussion, I really didn't prepare that such long notes, although that was all the time. But I want to quote a few lines from the book. The first is under the acknowledgments. The book has been a result of almost 9 years of research that began with the thesis at Jawaharlal University. It was also substantially written and shaped alongside my work in different capacities at the Tata Institute of Social Science, the London School of Economics, at the University of Mumbai. So this book has been a long time in coming, and the quality of the scholarship, I think, reflects that kind of intense concern, commitment to her subject and to what she's doing with it. I was struck in sort of passing by a section on page 79 talking about gender violence. This too, I think, Sanjeevini does not spend much time, I think 3 or 4 pages on this subject, but I've just been asked to take a look from elsewhere by another scholar named Kumar, who might be interested in it. I think it's just going out for publication now, called Politics of Sexual Violence in India. That's also become a very major subject, as you will probably know better than I. Her discussion of the camps is also part of the real story. I guess what I'm really saying is Sanjeevini's book, as the title tells us, is Gujarat since 2002. The real thrust of the book, the real substance of the book, is not so much over 2002, although that's certainly there, coverage of the riots, but it's in what's happened since 2002, and that has been looked at much less than others. This question of relief rather than rights comes up very strong. Exactly what does the government, what if anything, does the government owe to people who are displaced by violence? And Sanjeevini puts this in the context of what is owed to people if there's a hurricane, if there's an earthquake, as there was in Gujarat, an earthquake as there was in 2001, floods as there were in 2000. What is owed in the case of natural disaster, and what is owed in the case of man-made disaster? What is the government required, thought, to contribute to people who are suffering? And I think to your credit, that you don't really entirely answer that question. Am I correct? That there isn't maybe there isn't, and maybe there's a chance to discuss this a little more. But I think that question is still very much up for grabs. Different political leaders have answered it differently. But I want to quote a little bit from the book. As we walked in, I was told, please talk about contents a little bit because the students will not have read it. So I'll read a little bit from it. On page 123, the many government resolutions that the governors of Gujarat came up with for the Southwest, the wide effective efforts in 2002, in keeping with the government resolutions in previous instances of communal violence, all used the language of assistance that was gratuitous, which literally means given as a favor rather than as any legal requirement, which belies an understanding of communal violence as being on a par with other exigencies, such as fire, arson, or natural disasters. Both in terms of compensation and reparation, that's the next bit, both in terms of, I don't know whether you have copies, but I'm on page 124. Both in terms of compensation and reparation refer to the payment of an amount to make amends for wrong done. However, far from being compensation for the losses, both personal and material, suffered due to violence, the paltry amounts doled out by the government under various criteria are at best, as the word suggests, relief or assistance, not rights. And further on in the book, Sanjeevini deals in some what court cases are brought up, how people argue PI, public interest litigations, saying that the government really needs to pay more money, and it owes it as a responsibility. She discusses further the question of social responsibility and government responsibility. And again, what struck me, and again, Sanjeevini may correct me that you do have answers, but what struck me was the real questions. If there's a right, and people who suffer are owed something, are they owed something by the society, because the society has protected them, or owed them by the government? What are the responsibilities of the government to protect people from violence in the time of a riot? And of course, that becomes central to an understanding of 2002. What did the government of Gujarat do to protect or to be vulnerable the people of the state, the Muslims of the state primarily? What did it do or not do? And what then are its responsibilities? So I think this question of relief versus rights, to me actually, was the question that interested me more than any other in the book. The language of rights. The question also that she deals with is, once the camps were established, would people go home? And the results that she writes about in the book are quite touching. That many people who were driven out of their homes in their various areas of I'm familiar with the 4 districts, but obviously my sense is more upward. Some of them wanted to go back home and couldn't. They were not really permitted. They jumped the center line. They said, my neighbors have attacked me in ways I never would have expected. I can't go back with those people. And it was reminiscent. I don't think we do draw comparison to other parts of the world, but it's reminiscent of what happened after World War II, especially as Jews those who survived tried to go back to their homes and found that their neighbors didn't want them. So this question of what happened actually has gone through my mind often. What happens if you live in a neighborhood and people that have lived with all of your life, you visit with their children, you play with their children, their children have played, and they have attacked you. How do you go back? How can you go back and face them on a daily basis? I largest of them is Doha. It's on the western, going out of the western area of the Bad, not quite western fringes, but the western parts of the Bad. It is now, people who estimate the size of the area estimate it as 400,000 people. Now, growing steadily. There were people there before 2002, but the greatest growth of population has happened since. Now about 400,000 people, and it's not, there's a fair middle-class population there as well, because Muslims who were frightened were both middle class and wealthier and poor people, and they fled. The other area that she mentions is Bombay Hotel, which is less well known. It's an area where I think about 80,000 people now, and also poor. And all of these areas are almost entirely Muslim, and they were created by people fleeing. Christoph Jaffro and his student, Charlotte Thomas, have done studies of Jawapura, which are mostly written in French, which is one of the reasons why, though I promised myself to read them before I came here, I didn't. But they're still with me, as Charlotte just finished her dissertation, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, maybe half a year ago, at one of the French Parisian universities on life in Jawapura. But one of the questions that they were asking, and have dealt with in some of their English writings also, some of the questions they've asked are, what happens to the community in these neighborhoods? Do they become really isolated, true ghettos, not in contact with much of the rest of Ahmedabad? And the answer is yes, they do. And internally, they begin to ask, how do we arrange, what kind of education do we provide for ourselves? Is it very religious? Is it not religious? Is it one kind of religious, another kind of religious? And one of the elements that Charlotte has begun to talk about is, what are the results of connections with the Gulf states? That is to say, people from everywhere in India, but people, particularly non-Muslims, I take that, a number of Muslims, who go to the Gulf states to find work, and they make connections there. And the question is, to what degree will their social networks and their understanding of the world be formed coming from what is now a Muslim ghetto to a Muslim area of the world? To what degree will their ideas be more and more formed by their contacts with the world of Islam rather than the Indian world that they live in? When I read that, when I thought about that, I thought back to 1947, when partition took place. Pakistan was not so unlike India. And with every passing year and decade, the two countries have diverged more and more. So I don't know what will happen in Jawapura, and I don't think that Charlotte has dealt with that question yet, but it's an intriguing and very important question. Another question I've written here has to do with Modi. I can't use my handwriting, I have it all the time. Yes, the issue that Sanjeevini begins to deal with Modi was the chief minister, Narendra Modi was the chief minister of Gujarat, and he's now prime minister of India. The issue dealing with Modi at the time was, to what degree are Muslims beginning to vote for Modi? And the data that Sanjeevini gives us are 25% say they may vote for Modi, but the reality maybe is 10%, because people are frightened of speaking against this very powerful and very vindictive person. So the verbal comments are different from the actual voting ones. But there is this question of the degree to which some Muslims are beginning to vote for him. Sanjeevini talks at some length about the SIT, the Special Investigating Team. Is that what it is for Special Investigating Tribunal? Team. Special Investigating Team that the Supreme Court appointed for investigating Modi's role in 2002. And I just want to call for your attention that the SIT did not say that Modi was not guilty. They said we don't have enough evidence to substantiate the claims against it. They did not say this man is innocent, he didn't do anything. They said the evidence is not clear. We don't have enough evidence to support this. one thing to have hearsay, it's another thing to have exact information. But the SIP did not say that Moby was innocent. It said we don't have the kinds of information, the testimony that would stand up in court to find him guilty. I want to say a word also about the outside world, which does come up a little bit, because what's the role? Sanjeevini talks a little bit about more than a little bit about globalization, and oftentimes globalization, in many circles, globalization has a very negative connotation. It's rich people around the world taking over everything and gobbling it up for themselves. But I think that there are places in her book where Sanjeevini reminds us that world opinion has protected people who are under attack. We see it in the last couple of days, in the last few weeks here in India, with the case of the fellow who said you must have eaten meat, you must have eaten beef, and was killed. The latest case 2 days ago where one of the BJP officials had his face blackened. And it's the outside world. And you hear it in the comments by Indian politicians who will say, they may say this was a very bad thing, but even if they don't say this was a very bad thing, they'll say it really doesn't do us any good in the outside world. And if we're looking for foreign direct investment or any other kind of investment, this is the last thing that India needs on its record. So this issue of globalization cuts in many directions. Finally, the last issue that the book deals with, and I think is really quite fascinating, is that Prime Minister Modi, first Chief Minister Modi, and then Prime Minister Modi, has characterized himself as a Paspurush, the man of development. And he's asked us to please forget, or he just doesn't mention, issues of minority-majority relationships. And we saw that again in the murder of this. I'm blanking on the name of the town in UP. Dadri, yes, thank you. You'll find out when you get anyhow, in Dadri, the Prime Minister was very slow, as you all everyone to say anything about it at all. And when he spoke out, he said, well, the President yesterday condemned this, and he's right. So this is a man who has refashioned his image, attempted to say, I'm going to emphasize, and the other day he also said, do you want to fight people in the opposing community? I should say opposing the other community, or do you want to fight poverty? And that's the image that he's trying to project. And I think Sanjeevini, you leave us with a question, at least to me, the question is whether he'll get away with that. Will he be able to say, I'm a customer of development, and my stand on issues of communal relationships and minority relationships, we need to pay too much attention to that. And I hope in the discussion afterward, or over tea afterward among us, I don't think you really resolve this. It's left as an open question. It is an open question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spodek, for your insightful comments. Now I would like to introduce the second speaker of the day, and that is a very familiar face in the department. His name is Dr. Zahir, and as you know, he is a visiting professor in our department. Along with that, he is also the director of the Center for Promotion of Democracy and Secularism. And he has been the former professor and head of Department of Politics in Ismail Yusuf College in Mumbai, and he has also written several articles in prominent journals. Professor, please, fully happy here.
Professor Spodek, Kumar, Ketkar, Professor Sanjeevini, friends and students. So actually I'm thankful to the organizers, Department of Civics and Politics and Cambridge University Press, who have given me this opportunity to share with you some ideas about this very important book. Actually, I feel honored to find myself in the midst of so prominent panelists who have already established their names in the respective fields. Say, this is a very significant and indeed an addition to the already huge literature which is there about Gujarat 2002. Why it is significant and why it is a contribution, addition to that literature. So I immediately, I say, four things come to my mind. First of all, as she has informed you in the introduction and also here, that it is the outcome of 9 years of research. And say, during those 9 years, she has interviewed, say, so many survivors of Gujarat Gandhi who were living in relief colonies or relief camps. She has also talked to some of the perpetrators of violence. She also met with leaders, religious elite, journalists, lawyers, and so many other people who could help her give some information. So she collected a huge amount of primary data. That is a very significant aspect of this particular study. So naturally, this 9 years, they showed me that this is not only a very scholastic acumen, but also a lot of physical labor has gone in this particular study. So that is a very significant quality feature. Secondly, the sources, say primary sources, naturally she has interviewed for about a decade so many, say, survivors and opponents and rioters and journalists. So those interviews, they constitute the primary sources. But in addition to that, she has analyzed, say, government reports, inquiry commission reports, non-government reports, and say legal documents. And the secondary sources, she has referred to so many articles and books written by prominent scholars in this particular area. So that is actually, this book has become a kind of compendium, a source material in itself for the future scholars on the subject. So that is another quality for which the book is really valuable. Thirdly, the point of view, actually, with which she has written this. And that is actually liberal, democratic, secular, humanistic point of view. And say one important thing, that nowhere throughout the narration she doesn't sermonize about these values. It is her earnestness, the sincerity with which she tries to understand the problems of the survivors, those who are living in the relief colonies. That earnestness immediately makes a connect with the reader. And that crystallizes her humanistic point of view. So that is very, very important. And last thing is about the narration style, the prose. Because she writes lucidly in a very readable language, and many scholars, academic scholars, they don't pay much attention to the prose style, they don't care about it. But my point of view is that why should a scholastic book, an academic book, should necessarily be off-putting? This is a very rabbit style in that she has written the book, and that itself is a great book. Say, as far as the content is concerned, say, the book is not about Gujarat carnage of 2000, as it is made out clearly. It starts after that. Say, it is about the displacement and the condition in which those helpless people, they were forced to live, and what has, what conditions and what difficulties they have faced. This book actually reports their statement in addition to other source material, because the description of the 2002 carnage is incidental, because the whole book is written in back and forth, the kind of flashback, flash forward technique, because when she is interviewing so many survivors and also the government officials, the bureaucrats and the journalists, so naturally the incidents or those gory events which had taken place during the riots, 5 months of riots, they get described, and say that way, say we come to know about those events, but it is not exactly the focus of the book or main thrust of the book. Main thrust of the book is, as she has explained here, say it is actually whether this kind of displacement, forced migration, he has said, forced migration or displacement is an aberration, as most of the Hindutvaದಿ or the Hindu right, they are trying to make it out, or does it have much deeper, say, meaning and implications. So that is actually the basic premise on which she builds up or argument by referring to so many sources, and conclusion actually come to that later. Say, she has brought into focus, say, the Semitic religions concept of migration. Say, in biblical tradition, we are also living in a relief world. Adam and Eve, they were also kicked out from the Garden of Eden. So in that sense, we are also refugees here. In the biblical sense, but she refers to Exodus, say the Old Testament, and Hijrah. So I won't try to translate the term Hijrah because that may create problems. So let it be like that only. Hijrat, I will make an attempt to translate. So that is Islamic tradition and the biblical tradition of Exodus. And it's a very creative thing which she has done. That she refers to the 1973 film, Garbha, as a metaphor to point out the Muslim dilemma, whether to migrate to Pakistan or to stay back. This was actually a very, very well directed, great movie, in which Salim Narwa, the part played by Mohammed, who is actually the shoemaker of Agra. And after partition, actually, his extended family members, one after another, say they migrate to Pakistan. But since he is a believer of the ideals and the values of the freedom fighters of India, so he decided to stay back. And after that, so many issues or problems he had to face. Obviously, in North India, because the partition was there, and killing in which about 10 lakh people were killed, and lakhs of women were raped, and children were killed. So naturally, trouble was there. And the refugees were coming, the evacuation property issues, and so many other things. So ultimately, say, his daughter also commits suicide because the man who had gone to Pakistan, he got married, or he said that he won't be married. So ultimately she commits suicide. Then actually he is in studying foreign and he has the peer group or circle who are mostly members of other communities, Sikh and Hindus. But when it was almost impossible for him to stay back, then he decides to migrate himself. And when he was going at Communal to the railway station, he sees that a position is coming. And in that profession, other young people were there, in which his son was also there, who was demanding right to employment as citizens. Something changes in his mind, and he gets on the seat, and then he asks the Kanga owner to take back him, and he decides not to go to Pakistan. This was the film. The point is that you should have report the original story which was written by Smith, and that was Jani. Jani means roots, and she was a hardcore feminist, almost a rebel, a progressive writer, and she had faced so many problems. So many cases were filed against her for her writings. So in Jade, she was actually trying to locate a third alternative in the Islamic jurisprudence, Islamic tradition in that particular school. I just want to explain it to you that when Lord Lake, and say about 1804, in the beginning of 19th century, when he reached Delhi, and naturally whole of India, almost entire India, was under the control of East India Company. When he reached Delhi, he circulated a letter among the Muslim ulama and Muslim jurists, that you explain to us your position in relation to company rule. You have to make your position clear. What do you think about this particular rule? Because they got the political power from the Muslims, and say because of that they wanted to know what Muslim position is about company rule. That time, say Shah Waliyullah was not alive. He had died, but his son, his son Shah Abdul Aziz was there, and he called a meeting of all Muslim ulama. And say after 20 days of discussion, they decided that the entire country is actually now in the hands of the fighting Christians. So, according to Islamic theology, Islamic Sharia, or the Islamic tradition, they recommended that Muslims, they had only two options. Either they should migrate to a Muslim country, or they should declare jihad, holy war. Now, the first option was not feasible because of the size of the population, Muslim population here, and because of the cultural differences, because despite the fact that they are adherent of Islam, the fact is that they are naturally local converts. So that culturally they are as Indians or any other community here in India. So it was not feasible, first option. Second option, declaring jihad. So that was opted for, and Sayyid Ahmad Bareilly, he was appointed Amir al-Mu'mineen, that is the commander-in-chief of Muslims, and he established Wahhabi movement to take back political power in India by force. And instead of declaring jihad against the British, first he declared jihad against the Sikhs in India. And then, while fighting a battle in Kohat in 1931, he was killed. And that broke actually the backbone to the Wahhabi movement, but they participated in 1857 uprising also. The point is that what Ismat Sultan was trying to say, that the two options, either you migrate or you declare jihad, they have outlived their relevance in the changing circumstances of India. When she wrote the story, there were many people they were in the dilemma whether to go to Pakistan or to stay back. So she said that that option of declaring jihad is useless, meaningless. She presented a third option that now you are citizens of a democratic secular republic, and as citizens of this democracy you have to fight for your constitutional right, which was naturally signified by Balraj Sahni, that role played by Farooq Sheikh, and when he was actually demonstrating the right to water. So that makes actually the whole film, if you have this Islamic background in your mind, that makes the entire film more meaningful. And this dilemma of displacement, it is not new to Muslims because of the history. The Prophet went from Mecca, which was a city-state, to another, Medina, which was another city-state. So this migration in Gujarat, forced migration or displacement, was not actually going from one country or crossing any border and going to any other country. It was internal, or that IDPs, that concept came in the 90s by United Nations, and they declared internally displaced persons. And the definition was this only: the people either because of natural calamity or because of man-made reasons, which include violence against them, which include killing and all such things, if they are forced to leave their residences and they don't cross the international borders, so then they become IDPs, that is internally displaced persons. They have say so many privileges, or so many, say the state government is responsible to look after them in so many ways. So point is that what we have brought up in the book, that the BJP government in Gujarat, they were not even ready to accept that they were displaced. Their position to National Human Rights Commission, to National Commission for Minorities, and to some journalists, foreign journalists, their position was that many of them, they migrated or they left their home on their own, as it was not actually their desire to live in refugee camps where there was hardly any facility. They had so many problems: sanitation, food, even drinking water, and above all, even some refugee camps were attacked by the BJP workers when they were living there. They were attacked. So this, how they explain that this was actually on their own. They have migrated from those places and living on it was their, and so then they started forcing them to close down those refugee camps. So say in this Watani and this topic, that chapter it deals with. Watani is actually the Arabic term. Watan is not Urdu, it is in use, but it is originally Arabic term. Watan refers to so many things actually. It means it is actually a country, place of birth, native place. So in common parlance, those who use it, actually Watan refers to the native place. So many respondents, while she was interviewing them, they said that we were Watani, now we have become this topic is riot affected in our own city or in our own state. So in that actually it's a very painful reading. Say the kind of killing, sexual abuse, rape, and it's all gory things. It's very painful, and most of these things they're already in public domain. Already people they know about it, they must have read about it. Only importance here, because she supports all this description, the narrative of terrible kind of things which have happened in 2002, she supports the irrefutable evidences. That is very important. And for that she has taken a lot of trouble. Say, part of it. Intervene, say, those people, that was only one part of it. After that, connecting it to what happened with the government data and also with private data, that was really a great task, and she has meticulously done it. I congratulate her for that particular thing. Say, the government apathy, in certain cases, almost fostering, that was quite obvious because they refused to say police come to speak. Actually, it was all well known. And say Naroda Party, for example, there were about 96 people died. Say Maya Purnani minister, he was leading the mob. And the police officers, when say those Muslims, they approached them. So police officers said them that we don't have order to save your life, or to protect you. Similarly, Harin Pandya, another minister from Modi cabinet that time, he was leading a mob in a plush locality where they liked apartment building where middle class Muslims they were residing. So he was leading the mob to attack them. Then you say Gulbarg society, say that is well known. So about 100,000 people they encircled Gulbarg where Ehsan Jafri, Congress MP, ex-Congress MP, he was staying. It was totally a Muslim society, and they started shouting and then throwing what we call in Gujarati, that is burning an axe to the compound. And then they asked that Ehsan Jafri should come out of his flat and meet us. And when he came out, he was hacked to death, burned alive. And then they entered the society and killed about, say, about more than 86 people there in one incident. And he was an MP. And most importantly, the sitting High Court judge, can you imagine? Sitting High Court judge of Ahmedabad, he had to run from his residence, he had to seek shelter somewhere. And when this was asked by the National Commission on Human Rights, so they said that he also went on his own. Police or nobody actually threatened him. So this is what happened. So this is not exactly the core segment of the book. This is actually, she also refuses to go into detail about the causes. Because the BJP would always, because in their government document, they would come out that was actually post-Gogra violence. They would never say that it was actually Gogra violence, Gujarat riot. It was post-Gogra violence, emphasizing that the original sin was committed by the Muslim by burning that Sabarmati, two coaches of Sabarmati train. So she refuses even to discuss the causes because she says the implications, what happened to these people. Many of them are psychological wrecks, actually because of the traumatic stress. Many of them, they develop psychological disorders and they lost their livelihood. And still actually those, say about how many years, 13 years after that garment, still many of them they have not recovered. The normalcy is only on paper, but they are still facing so many problems. Say, when the construction or rehabilitation started, this is very unfortunate that the state refused to do anything, complete indifference. It was only the Muslim NGOs like Jamaat Islami, Jamiatul Ulama, and Communal, they undertook this project of construction. And this is very, very sad. This creates so many problems for us who wants to secularize Muslim society. Because they constructed the houses, the Muslim NGOs. So they came with some strings attached. That came with the strings attached. That you become more religious. You become practicing Muslim. And that is one explanation why do you find hardly did any. They did not contribute in any significant way in construction or even establishing a relief camp. This is actually very sad because India, as such, or secular India, has failed Muslims, not only in Gujarat but so many other places. So they have pushed them. Indirectly, they are pushing Muslims in the lap of fanatics, in the lap of Haman and such organization because this is very sad. Because now it is very difficult to talk about secularism or anything progressive among Muslim artists. Because you face all these questions. Where were you when Gujarat was running, when we were attacked, when we were raped? Where were you? And you have not come forward. Means not personally me, mine, you, anybody, but even Pharaoh or Shekha, very old activists. They face these problems. This is very unfortunate. Then, say, violence and good governance. This is very important. She has played stop over the two things: violence with good governance, or human right violation and good governance. Modi, she has raised one very pertinent basic question: that all this outcry throughout India and also outside India, because Modi was not even issued visa in to go visit America. Asia Watch, Human Rights Watch, so many international organizations everywhere. Naturally, this carnage 2002 carnage was standing. But what happened? Modi kept on winning election after election, and ultimately, say he was projected by BJP as Vikas Bush, or actually a man who was a decisive leader, and ultimately became prime minister. She raised up this question that what exactly is how can you explain this? Okay. And the role of the state, actually, she has also discussed the factor. Good governance, according to World Bank definition, which she has quoted, good governance, in the definition of World Bank, speaks about inclusiveness, speaks about participatory democracy, speaks about transparency, speaks about accountability. These things are necessary to call a good governance. In Modi's parlance, in Modi's definition, good governance is rising sunsets. See the sunsets. See actually economic say prosperity, which is available only to handful of people, because still in India, forget about food, shelter, even drinking water. The state has failed miserably to provide portable drinking water to thousands of villagers in this state, which is supposed to be very advanced. So, his or BJP's interpretation of good governance is actually those who are already money, they are making a lot of money. That is actually their interpretation of good governance. The point is that this is a neocons or neoconservatives definition of good governance, because their basic idea, as Chomsky has pointed out in another context, that neocons, their attack is actually now, because it's all capitalism, free market economy, laissez-faire started for democracy. But now they want to undermine democracy, especially in the area of banking and in the area of public spending. They want to undermine democracy, and this is what exactly he has given a figure that since he has become prime minister, how much he has spent on public. That is drastically reduced on social welfare. These are actually the area of concern for common people. that is very important. Or just everything is supported by evidence. Finally, I must say that the book is not without flaws. I must also point out some flaws are there. Some are actually factual errors. It is about when you discuss demography of Gujarat. So you say that the mass land of Gujarat opens into Indian Ocean. It is neither Indian nor it is ocean. It is Arabian Sea. It is serious. It is Arabian Sea. Secondly, when you discuss it, say this trade union, that is the Textile Labour Association, which was established by Anusia Sarabhai along with Gandhiji, and you made a comment that was the first labor union established in India. It is totally wrong. First of all, it was not a union, it was an association. The difference or distinction is very much legal, because Article 19, if you refer to Indian Constitution, to establish association and union. These are two different things. A textile labor union was not the oldest, it was ITA, the oldest trade union, and Textile Labour Association was actually a Gandhian ploy to perpetuate patron-client relationship even in industry. And through Textile Labour Association, he wanted to implement his phony economic idea of trusteeship. That was totally different kind of thing. So this is not factually correct. Thirdly, it may be actually while commenting on WP, so you have added that it is the reformist organization of Muslims. Even they will take objection. They don't want any kind of reform Islam. It is not a reformist organization, it is a revivalist and the most orthodox, one of the most orthodox organizations. This is factual. One error or one flaw which could be typing mistake. Because when you say that Wali Gujarati, who it is Wali Gujarati, when his tomb was demolished by the Reuters, so immediately after that, say the Ahmedabad Muslim Corporation constructed a road on road. It does not the science is called the municipal corporation, but it was under immediately would jump to it that we have not done it. One more thing which I must point out, that despite so many evidences and huge load of material and so many reports about police complicity, state complicity in 2002 riot, she has restrained herself from calling it pogrom, calling it a genocide. She uses cybernetic violence, which could be interpreted anything. Calling it a void is actually too much of an understatement. Thank you very much.
Our final speaker of the day is Sri Kumar Ketkar, and I'm sure most of us don't really need an introduction. As most of us are aware, he's an eminent journalist, public figure, and chief editor of Badigar Marathi. He has also worked with the Economic Times and has been the editor-in-chief of the Marathi newspaper Lokhande and the editor of Maharashtra Times. Mr. Ketkar has also published several books in Marathi, such as the much acclaimed Rana Mukticha Undala and Madhava Vishwa. He is also the recipient of several awards, including the prestigious Padma Shri. Sir, it is an absolute honor to have you here. Please join.
taking your papers.
Oh, no, Mumbai is living in
Yes, is humiliating.
Are you returning it?
I don't consider that it honors me,
Yeah, okay.
and so there is no point in returning it. If I felt that I was honored, then I will definitely return it. Well, actually, much of the book that is discussed by the two earlier speakers have told you the really tremendous contribution that Sanjeevini has made to the scholarship, not only on Gujarat and displacement, but actually the current global crisis of displacement. It may appear to you that the book is about Gujarat since 2002, but if you are regular readers of international newspapers or watching international news, you will find that Gujarat is not exception, though it has difference in its displacement and migration pattern. About 30 or 40 years ago, I think it was Richard Crossman who published a book called Forced Out. I think it was Richard Crossman who edited it. And Forced Out is a huge book. And that book gives you, 30, 40 years ago, how many people globally are being forced out because of all kinds of wars, and not only wars, all kinds of expansionism and imperialism and neocolonialism, and not only neocolonialism, expansionism and imperialism, but also because of ethnic tensions, religious extremism. And all these ethnic tensions and religious extremism is leading to people getting forced out, and that's why the book title is Forced Out. It has less text and more photographs. Large book, and it gives literally horrifying, disturbing, frightening photographs of people who have been forced out. When that book was published, obviously Gujarat had not happened. Otherwise, Gujarat would have been added in that book, the photographs. But for those of us journalists who have visited Gujarat, have seen them forced out, and they are in as miserable condition, as in miserable condition as those who are described today by some people as Rohingyas, boat people, and so on and so forth. According to one estimate done by the United Nations, as many as 60 million or 6 crore people today are forced out. They are not allowed to land anywhere, they are not allowed to live anywhere, they are not allowed to eat, they are not allowed to have any facilities. Sometimes they are just moving from one place, 6 crore, moving from one place to other place, going in different countries. And we find news like Germany taking some 20,000 people, then additional 20,000 people, then some more people, and Angela Merkel's name appears for a Nobel nomination for accommodating so many migrants. So many meaning less than 1 lakh at that point of time. I may remind you that as many as 1 crore people, 1 crore, 10 million people migrated because of displacement during Indo-Pak War of 1971. And nearly 1 crore, majority of them Bengalis, Hindu as well as Muslim, came to India at a time when India was not exactly in a wonderful economic situation. 1 crore migrants to India, displaced people in India, many of whose sisters, wives and mothers were raped, killed in East Pakistan, which became Bangladesh later on. And all that in addition to something like 1 lakh prisoners of war, close to 1 lakh prisoners of war. That was the burden on the economy in 1971 when India was fighting its own battle with poverty called Garibi Hatao. And this was the additional burden caused by displacement from East Pakistan or later Bangladesh. So it is not as if we are not familiar with this. Even today, many people here in Mumbai complain about Bangladeshis who actually have their roots and origins in 1971 and they should be thrown out. I don't want to go into that because we are discussing a book. But I must point out that globally at present, the crisis of displacement and migration, which actually is the issue of this book, is taking place primarily only in Asia after Second World War. In Middle East, we are finding people getting completely thrown out of their countries, be it Syria, be it Egypt, any place, and they are trying to go everywhere. From Afghanistan, people came to Pakistan in hordes, in millions. A small country, Sri Lanka, you don't know how small it is. Sri Lanka's population is equal to MMRDA Mumbai's population. Sri Lanka is equal to Mumbai metropolitan region, 2 crore people. Mumbai itself is about 1.65 crores, and if you take the MMRDA region up to Karjat side, Vasai and others, it is close to 2 crores. That is the whole population of Sri Lanka. And the entire north region, Jaffna and other parts included, huge displacement of Sri Lankan Tamils, and they migrated to Tamil Nadu, creating a political crisis in Tamil Nadu because they were Tamil speaking and so they had affinity towards the Tamil people in Tamil Nadu. And Prabhakaran had visualized the dream of Vishal Tamil Nadu, in which he wanted to include Tamil Nadu along with Sri Lanka Tamil region and partition Sri Lanka. That did not work out. We don't talk about Sri Lanka much, but the number of people killed in Sri Lanka is not small. It is in lakhs, Tamils as well as Sri Lankans. Newsweek and Time correspondent Anita Pratap has written a book on Island of Blood, and in that she tells us about the massive crisis that the displacement caused in Sri Lanka and outside Sri Lanka. So next to our country, Sri Lanka has this problem, Middle East has this problem, Pakistan has these problems, now even Nepal has started this problem, and whole of Southeast Asia is suffering from it, as we know about the boat people. So displacement is a global issue, and incidentally it started only in 20th century. First World War started some, Second World War put it across additional chapters to it, and during Cold War all these things have happened. Without sounding pessimist or alarmist, because the situation is so alarming that one doesn't have to sound alarmist. The situation is actually alarmist, and we are sitting on a volcano, and one of the eruptions that may take place out of this volcano will be that of migration, displacement, ethnic, religious, extremist tensions. We cannot guarantee that when we leave this hall, there is no riot going anywhere or killing going. We cannot guarantee that anymore. Because everywhere the language of hate and bigotry is replacing the dialogue of politics. Who hates whom more and who has more numbers and therefore can exercise this hatred in actual violence is what we are seeing. So I don't want to go into that because that's your experience. I can only say that unless we start correcting this situation right now, meaning just right now, it is likely to engulf us all in next 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, or 4 years, or 5 years, and certainly 10 years. It is not going to be easy decade for this. Coming to the book, this book is an extraordinary work, truly extraordinary work. I was rather feeling embarrassed that when Urdu asked me to come for the release of the book, because I am a media person. Media persons have a very peculiar relationship with academics. Academics think that media persons are superficial, philistine, they don't have much attention, retention span, the retention value is small, and there is no point in discussing with media persons any fundamental academic research scholarly issue. Because what they will give you is some superficial impressions. And those newspapers are described as history written in hurry, and she has also referred to all this history in hurry. But generally newspapers are not considered as serious referencing for history. They are taken as a cue and then all other researchers are done. So this being the view of the academics of media persons also have a view of academics. They feel that academics are boring by nature, by definition, why not? And not only they are boring by nature, they cannot really focus on comprehensive aspect of any reality. They take only data, put tables, interpret tables, and moreover, they take 9 years to publish a book. We have to produce newspaper every day. And if we go on doing research, your next day's paper will come 9 years after. And nowadays, with the media expanding and television online, 24/7, we don't have even that day. Earlier, we used to go to, in newspaper parlance, bed, as they used to call it. Newspaper used to go to bed at 12 o'clock at night. So till next morning when the paper is delivered to your house, most of the journalists are relaxed. Generally, they don't get up early. Media persons don't like to get rise early because they sleep very late, or they claim that they sleep very late. So with TV, it is 24/7. They have to be alert all the time. So there is no scope for all the research and data and all that. So media persons have to be on that. And now with social media, you don't have to do any study at all. Whatever comes to your mind is your research. Whatever comes to your mind, your prejudice, your hatred, everything becomes global wisdom. I am 100% sure Socrates would have committed suicide. He was poisoned or he took poison, but he would have taken poison looking at the social media today. So the point is that what Sanjeevini has done is she has surmounted all these prejudices about various sections from where the data comes. And she has studied not only data in a manner of very boring detail, but I must say sometimes the book reads like Robert Ludlum's horror story, horror and espionage story. She has done such wonderful stylistic writing in this book that I felt that she should be a journalist, apart from being such a scholar. Because in this book, as Mr. Zahir said, Mr. Howard said, she has taken us across the whole spectrum. Though the book says Gujarat since 2002, she goes back in time quite often into 2002, like what happened in the riots in 1985. 1985, 1969, 1973, all that she has gone into. And I happened to cover the 1985 riots. I happened to cover the 1974 fall of the government. I happened to cover the first arrival of the BJP government in Gujarat in 1995 on its own. All these agitations from 1969 I have been able to see or cover or write about as a journalist. So I was familiar with all the sequence of events, but though the book says Gujarat since 2002, she has been able to incorporate many historic details and weave them into a certain format reaching towards a certain conclusion. That is extraordinarily difficult task to do because it covers not only the ground, such vast ground, but she takes references cogently, writes from where she has taken references, and without sounding unduly too sociologist scholar, she actually makes a very sociologically scholarly arguments. I'll just give you a current topical reference. Being a journalist, I cannot avoid. In 1983-85 riots, Atidas Patel riots, they were led by the same group of people today which are led by Hardik Patel in Gujarat. Hardik was not there because Hardik is only 22 now. But the same group of Patels, the Patels then, were leading agitation against reservation. And at that time, initially, they were against Dalits and OBCs, they were not against Muslims. Soon that got enveloped by anti-Muslim. From anti-Dalit, anti-reservation riots, soon it became anti-Muslim riot. So the business of not accepting people whom we don't agree with is a characteristic of certain Gujarati community, certain Gujarati people. That doesn't make all Gujaratis communal, that doesn't make all Gujaratis non-progressives or reactionaries or conservatives or Sanatanis. But the fact is, the dominant voices of Gujarat have always had this anti-tendency, anti-reservation and anti-Muslim. And the riots have been quite common, 69, 83 and so on, 74, 83 and so on and so forth. Now the same Patel community which wanted all reservations to be abolished was demanding reservations for Patel community. But actually there is a ploy in that. It is not so simple. Actual ploy is what Mohan Bhagwat inadvertently or advertently revealed. That we don't want reservation at all actually. So Patel's agitation was to create a counter magnet, create a reservation for Patel's demand. Soon that was followed by Brahmins in Gujarat saying that Brahmins also should have reservations. And in that context, Mohan Bhagwat said, actually there should be no reservation. Incidentally, there should be no reservation has been the argument of the Sangha Parivar ever since the idea of reservation came into existence. Now whether reservations have been misused, used, abused, politicized is a different question which I don't want to go into it. But linking that sociological phenomenon of anti-reservation to anti-Muslims and without directly making a political statement, writing the political context of that all Gujarat is or Gujarat was, I think was a tremendous tightrope walk which she has done. And that tightrope walk she has been able to do because her heart and head both are in right places, correct places, right in the left places. And therefore, she has been able to distinguish scholarship, political position, actual politics going on, and what the data tells you on the topic as it exists today. She has been able to integrate all these aspects without sounding openly, proactively political, but while making, for those who understand, those who can read between the lines and beyond the lines, will see the politics in the book, though the book is not political. And therefore, in that context, sometimes Zahir I feel that it is good she used the generic word called violence, because that provides her an academic excuse to say that the moment I use the word genocide, I will be typified. I am using the word which you are using. And so she has actually boxed them by taking that apparently neutral stand, which obviously when one reads the book, one realizes that in that sense she is not quote unquote neutral as many scholars are supposed to be wrongly. And the Gujarat that Professor Zahir Ali described, and which you know in Jaunpur about which Professor Howard described, they are actually minefields. I remember as journalists we interviewed 3 of the terrorists privately in jail. We were allowed exclusively to interview them. Myself, Javed Akhtar and Mahesh